about your main opponent, I guess, which is Alex Burghardt. So someone just shouted you never see him?
No.
But he's the local MP, surely you do?
Who is he?
Really? Wow. He's not replying to your letters. And do you think it's important that your local representative should respond to your inquiries?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I would imagine it is.
It's
Funny enough, in the 2 or 3 weeks before an election,
Yeah,
I'm seeing lots of
exactly.
boards with his name on. No, I've met Alex a number of times. I think he's a lovely guy. He's not from Brentwood, so he's not local. Some could argue that therefore there's a roots issue there, I guess.
The thing is with this, Russell, is that I believe that an MP should act in the interest of his constituency first, his country second, and his party third. So if I become an MP, everyone in the constituency, whether they voted for me or not, will have my phone number, they will have my email address, and they will have my attention, because that's what an MP should be doing. That's what they're paid to do. That's the way they should. And I can't promise that I can make all the changes that people want, but I will promise that I can try. So my phone number is on every one of my leaflets, and that's not going to change.
Okay.
So if someone's got my leaflet, they've got my phone number.
I think the 3 most pressing issues for Britain are right now.
Well, there's a lot more than 3.
No, just 3. Just 3. Otherwise we'll be here all night. Go on. The 3 most pressing.
I think we have to talk about immigration, because if you just said the single most pressing issue, it has to be immigration, because mass uncontrolled immigration affects every single thing that we do, from our infrastructure to our NHS to our security, to broken manifesto pledges. It is the biggest thing we need to look at. Behind that, the NHS. The NHS isn't broke, it doesn't need more money, it's broken. It's a bucket with holes in it, and pouring more water in is just going to make the water come out faster. And then tying for 3rd place, I think you'd probably put crime and education. I wouldn't want to choose between the 2. We know the crime rates, certainly the crime rates in Brentwood have increased since Burghardt came here. Crime rates nationally are not looking good. Detection rates are at an all-time low. I don't see the police on the street anymore unless they've got a rainbow-coloured car. I would say they're the 3 big.
Reform's policy on tax is that no one would pay tax on earnings up to £20,000. Don't you think net zero is important? I mean, I know China and India and the United States are churning out coal and oil and fossil fuel emissions at a fantastic rate, and we're only responsible for 1% of global emissions, but surely we've got a race to get to net zero, haven't we? No. You can see I'm doing this with a smile on my face, can't you?
Even if we had to get to net zero, the cost of it is prohibitive. Does anyone know the difference between 1 million and 1 billion? 3 zeros, yeah? To count to 1 million will take you 11.5 days. To count to 1 billion will take you 31.5 years. The cost of net zero is estimated at between 2 and 3 trillion pounds. By trying to get there, all we are going to do is become poorer and colder and export our emissions elsewhere, which is what we're doing.
Okay. And it's Reform's policy that you're effectively going to cancel the net zero direction of travel. So no quest to get to net zero. That's going to save, I think Nigel Farage was saying the other day, £30 billion in the short term on an annual basis.
So annualised, we think it'll save £30 billion by scrapping net zero. We can't achieve it anyway, so scrap it. All we're doing is impoverishing the nation by trying to achieve something we cannot achieve. We can affect national policy, which will feed down to a local level. What I hear from the local councillors is they're going to put new flower pots in the high street, they're going to paint a few walls, they're going to make and they're going to introduce more free parking, which is irrelevant if you have no shops. We counted 26 empty units in Brentwood High Street. That's unbelievable. I've lived here, like I said, since 1971. I have never seen that number of empty units. It's too expensive for people to open up new shops and take that chance. We should be a nation of wealth creators. We should be encouraging risk takers, and all we're doing is taxing people out of existence. We can't affect the private rentals because they are, as you say, some of the private companies. What we can do is, for any small and medium enterprise on the high street, you abolish business rates. If you do it nationally, it will feed down to a local level. You abolish business rates nationally, for shops on the high street, all of a sudden their monthly overheads are cut in half. Now you get the shoppers come. Now you can introduce free parking and put a couple of nice flower pots out, and then people will come. There's other tax benefits that we will introduce as well, but that's one of the most important ones. And in order to make sure that small businesses can compete with big businesses, you introduce an online business tax so that Amazon will have to pay a 4% premium, and that can be reinvested into the high street, and then that will level up the small business compared to the multinational business. By slashing the business rates and bringing in the online delivery tax, you'll be able to do it nationwide for high streets everywhere, and then the likes of Amazon and other big businesses that benefit from economies of scale, you just charge them a 4% premium, which they'll pass on to the consumer, so the consumer now has a choice: pay the 4% or go to the high street.
Yeah. I guess
we need to treat procurement in the NHS like you would treat your own money. So with a private sector mentality, stop wasting money on things. I've seen it. I have a friend at the moment who sells into the NHS, and she sells hemostats, so bits of kit that stop flood. And they had a discount contract with the NHS that expired 3 years ago, so they automatically rolled onto a spot contract, 20% more. The NHS has been paying them 20% more for the last 3 years. She's approached them to try to get them to renegotiate, which would be a cost to her business. They haven't come back to her. 3 years on, we're still paying £200.
what are you going to do on inheritance tax? What are you going to do on corporation tax? Tell us what the tax changes are going to be.
So the proposal of the corporation tax is to raise the threshold to £100,000 and drop the rate to 20%. So once you hit £100,000 in profit, you will start paying corporation tax at 20%.
As opposed to 25%.
As opposed to 25% only.
It was 19% before Rishi Sunak put it up.
Yeah, absolutely. That will help a lot of small businesses. In terms of how we can streamline it within the government, we just need to shout very loud and very hard and keep pushing.
Inheritance tax?
Inheritance tax, we're lifting the threshold to
2 million.
2 million, isn't it? Yeah, 2 million.
It's currently about 600,000. So apart from husband to wife, wife to husband, if you leave an estate, I think currently that's worth more than £600,000, you pay 40% inheritance tax. So what you're suggesting is that if this estate is worth up to 2 million, you'd pay nothing.
Absolutely, and a lot of people have breached the inheritance tax threshold, not because they've necessarily worked hard, but because maybe their parents worked hard and they've inherited their house. So where property prices have outstripped inflation, it's unfair on a lot of people then to have to be brought into that inheritance tax trap.
Okay. VAT, stamp duty?
Stamp duty, we're lifting that to the first threshold will be 750,000, so to make it more affordable for young people and everyone to buy their first home. And there'll be other thresholds above that.
If you're caught carrying a knife for the second time, it should be a mandatory prison sentence. That would make sense. 80% of people caught with a knife for the second time don't go to prison. They're let off by what some would call a rather liberal judiciary. And actually, I don't know if any of you saw Question Time on Thursday. It's a hard watch these days. I find it painful to watch Fiona Bruce and her kind of biased BBC audience. But there was a plethora of panellists this Thursday talking about knife crime. And even the Conservative on the panel, Andrew Mitchell, who frankly should know better, decided to tell us that they thought the answer was as follows: less stop and search, because it's victimising. We need it's all down to austerity, because people that are poor therefore stab people. Well, I've been poor, I've never stabbed anybody. And I kid you not, this is the stuff that came out of our politicians' mouths. And that we should educate kids more and provide more ping pong tables and basketball courts, and then all will be resolved. You've got legal migration, which Rishi Sunak has said in the last few days he has already curbed by simply holding back on student visas and work visas, and believe it or not, we're not allowing anyone that comes over as a student from another country to bring their entire family with them. I mean, can you believe up until a few weeks ago that this country was allowing that to happen? And something like 55% of legal migrants that come in make no contribution to Britain whatsoever. They are a net drain. So again, how's reform going to stop that?
So the first thing we need to do is leave the ECHR, so to give power back to the British judges.
So the European Court
of Human Rights. Yes. We then need to make it abundantly clear that anyone that arrives here illegally, and let me make this clear, it is illegal to enter the UK without a passport. So this is not using language to make these people appear less human.
And that's a Conservative law, right? So
absolutely.
Yes.
It is illegal, so therefore, within the definition of the law, If they arrive here without a passport, they are illegal. It is illegal to arrive in the UK without a passport. We make it law that no one that arrives here illegally will ever be resettled here, which forces people, if they have a genuine asylum claim, to come through the genuine asylum routes. I'm suggesting that if we put our pledges into action, people will stop dying at sea, which is good, obviously. No one wants to see people drowning at sea. The third point that we're going to do, we propose, is that we introduce a new Department of Immigration that does what it says it should do. And the final point is, if none of those work, we will simply pick people up in the Channel, and rather than escorting them to the UK, we will escort them back to France.
Which would make sense. There's nothing physically stopping us doing that. Basically, turning south instead of north, right? It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Well, given that we once had the best navy in the world, I'm sort of wondering where they've got to.
Yeah. Some people have called this the immigration election. You might not be particularly convinced by what the Conservatives have done. You might not be particularly convinced by what Labour is saying they're going to do. Keir Starmer, of course, is saying that he's going to smash the gangs, even though they might be 500 miles away, 1,000 miles away. They might be in Turkey, Syria. There's 500 migrant gangs, by the way, that are taking £5,000 a time to put people on small boats and send them over here. Frankly, I know I'm supposed to be independent here, but let's be honest. It's really not going to happen, is it? Smashing the gangs when you have no legal jurisdiction over those gangs and the countries they're in would seem, yes, for the birds. There's 460,000 civil servants in Britain now, more than there has ever been as a consequence of COVID and so on. I would sack 100,000 of them on Monday. Particularly the ones that insist on working from home, do about 3 hours work a day, and that object. There's also a body of civil servants, by the way, that are currently suing the government for the Rwanda policy. How dare civil servants? By the way, the clue is in the name: servants, civil servants. How dare they?
We need to set an example. The civil service is bloated. It needs to be trimmed down massively. Border force, they don't do their job description. Their job description doesn't match their title, should we say. A Department of Immigration, we need to employ people that do the job they're paid to do. So again, bringing in a private sector mentality. The whole of the civil service was against Brexit. That's why nothing was enacted correctly. We need to bring in people that will do the job they're paid to do. Simple as that. We only have an army of 75,000 people at the moment. The aircraft carriers Steve was talking about are, even if they weren't broken, it wouldn't matter because we don't have any planes to put on them. Wow. So we can't even make steel to make guns anymore because our metal is made in India, so that we can achieve net zero. So even if we went to war, we've got no planes, a really small army and no weapons. Excellent. In order to achieve peace and maintain peace, it doesn't hurt to have a decent army. Our army should be of the right size, it should be properly equipped, and if you train. We also want to introduce a pay review for soldiers so that they're paid more than Amazon workers. And we can, if we have to, defend ourselves. At the moment, we couldn't. If you look at our contract, it is costed. Now, it's ambitious, it's bold, but it is costed. If we can make those savings, I make changes in my business on a small scale. If those changes can be magnified nationally, we can cut waste, so we can fund it. And when you start putting more money into people's pockets, so for example, our income tax threshold lift, that's going to benefit every single person that's earning £20,000 a year or less by £1,500 a year. You only have to take one person off benefits to pay for 9 other threshold rises. You will find that this is what the IFS hasn't looked at. They've looked at the cost, but they haven't incorporated the benefit of doing that. So when you start to make work pay, certainly for the youngsters, it means that they're going to want to work. People will come off benefits naturally. Within our costs and within our financing, we haven't necessarily put in the growth that we expect to see as a result of people wanting to get up, go to work, and benefit from being at work. We can't be patriotic because if we are, we're racist. We can't raise a cross of St George or a Union Jack because we're not allowed to, because of our cultural heritage. Yeah. I fundamentally disagree with that. You know, I believe that we should be patriotic. We should be allowed to be patriotic. We should be proud of our history and of our culture. We should teach our children to be proud of our history and of our culture.
Sadiq Khan has banned England flags on London Black House.
Have you seen that we want to make St George's Day and St David's Day a national holiday?
Yes.
Because we believe in patriotism.
The gentleman says he's an immigrant as such, so he come from a legal one, of course. Didn't come over on a boat yesterday from Calais, okay. And is a Reform supporter, but is concerned that some people that were previously Reform supporters might be drifting back to the Conservatives, because you think the line that is being peddled by the Conservatives, that a vote for Reform is a vote for Labour, is getting through.
Most of us in here are legal immigrants to the UK. Very few of us are pure Anglo-Saxon. It's just that some of us have been here longer than others. Secondly, if you want to convince your friends that a vote for Reform it has value, you just need to look at the polls. We are ahead of the Tories in the polls. So a vote for the Tories is a vote for Labour. Vote for Reform. Vote for what you believe in. Obviously, ULEZ needs to go. All of that needs to go. That goes along with that. We get rid of net zero. That gets scrapped. How has he done it? He only got something like 18% of the vote in London. Thankfully, the London Assembly is proportional representation, so we have 1 or 2 members on there, I believe, that are Reform. That should hopefully increase with the current polling. Not that we're going to see another election for the London Mayor anytime soon. If we have a voice in Parliament, we will scrap ULEZ. Postal votes is another one we want to get rid of. Absolutely, it is a problem, especially in London.
But it's not just ULEZ in London, is it? It's congestion charging. It's also the ridiculous dynamic of a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit throughout the city, at all hours of the day and night. And to be clear, the reason that these things are imposed, it's not for air quality, it's not for safety. This bunkum by Sadiq Khan that it saves lives. Do you know how many people have officially died of bad air quality in this country ever? One. It's on one death certificate ever. So the rest of this notion that somehow fumes in London kills people, it's absolute fantasies for the birds. What has happened in London is Sadiq Khan has decided that he's run out of the ability to tax people through council tax. He's got to look to other methods of taxation. That's exactly what Sadiq Khan has done. Brilliant. Well, look, well done for being here. Are you interested? Are you politically engaged? So hang on, you were compelled to go to a Pride assembly, and they didn't have a D-Day assembly? Shenfield School. What, the teacher called Nigel Farage a liar? Future MP for Brentwood. I don't want to get you into trouble here, but when I was at school, I used to get into loads of trouble by standing up for myself and just speaking my mind and being principled, and I think more kids of your age need to do that. Well, there's a thing that they should teach in schools, which is a thing called critical thinking, which is just because a teacher's telling you something, that, you know, I don't know, Banner Hastings is trans or something ludicrous, you should be able to question it, whether you're right or wrong. You know, the whole point of school is to teach you how to debate. And
the point of school is to teach kids how to think, not what to think. Yes. Yeah? You should be being educated, not indoctrinated, and you should be taught to challenge authority, but respect for authority as well. Yeah. So in social science, you're not allowed to say the words Nigel Farage or reform, because if you do, you'll get a detention. Would you like me to come and give a talk at your school? I'd be more than happy to do so.
So what are they going to do if Nigel Farage is elected on Thursday as a Member of Parliament for Clacton, which he's widely expected to be? I mean, we can talk in a minute, Paul, actually, about what we expect to happen with regards to reform seats. But are they saying that you're not allowed to utter the name of a member of His Majesty's Parliament? I mean, wow. Wow.
If Nigel Farage does get elected, I think we may well come down and visit your school.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
I'm sure they're not going to turn down a sitting MP coming to visit your school. The question is what we would do regarding critical race theory, woke gender ideology, and all of the other stuff that's rubbish that's taught in schools.
Yes.
Ended. Yeah. We should be teaching our children. We should be teaching our children that boys can't be girls and girls can't be boys. We should be teaching our children that you can speak freely. We should be ending the woke transgender ideology that is replacing some of the current curriculum. We should be teaching children about our history, our successes and our failures, because we've not been perfect over the years, but we should be teaching them the truth. What can you do to help get me elected? Well, the first thing is vote for me. The second thing is tell your friends to vote for me.
I think that there's a lot of, this is what I was going to say in my kind of closing remarks really, there's a lot of voter apathy at the moment, understandably, because politicians are just so, well, I'm going to say it, so shit, aren't they? And so as a consequence of that, a lot of people just want to stay at home. I think a lot of people think, yeah, reform stands for a lot of things that I agree with, but you know, maybe they're not going to take government. You know, we're not this time going to see Nigel Farage in number 10. Potentially in the future, we might. So as a consequence, you know, I'll leave it up to somebody else. I was going to suggest that everybody in this room, and actually regardless of how you vote, try and persuade 5 people each to vote, and remind them on the morning of the 4th of July, chase them up in the afternoon, chase them up in the evening, and make sure that they have actually gone and voted. The biggest problem for all political parties, it's not so much the persuasion by way of campaigns and debates and adverts and so on. It's actually getting people to go out physically and vote on the day. A lot of general elections only result in about 65 to 70% of people voting. So in other words, 30 to 35% of people, a third of the electorate, don't bother voting. And look, I was talking about this on TalkTV earlier on about compulsory voting. I'm not a fan of compulsory voting. I think it probably encourages the wrong behaviour. But you know, our forefathers fought rather hard for our right to be here and to vote. What, for people? Oh, don't start me on this one. 4 persons. There you go. Forefathers. No, that they sacrificed and offer us to vote. So I think, look, without it being compulsory, we absolutely should. And here's the thing, and I don't think Paul will disagree with me here. I think in certain parts of Britain, particularly Essex, which is sensible, centre-right, salt of the earth, I think this election is going to be much closer than people think it is. I think Labour are going to win it, for sure, and probably with a decent majority, but there will be certain seats, including this one, Billericay and Basildon, Clacton, Thurrock, Harlow, where there is such a tide of discontent amongst previous Conservative voters, sick to the back teeth of the lies that have come out of the Conservative Party's mouths, the broken promises on manifesto pledges, many of which, if any, have been enacted, and I'm definitely independent here, obviously, but I think that the momentum that Reform have got, particularly since Nigel Farage decided to become leader again, is phenomenal, and I think there could be some real big upsets on Thursday night. And Paul, I think you could be one of them.
Yes.
So where we are now, in the next 3 days, you are witnessing potentially the death of a political party, i.e. the Conservative Party, and the birth of a new one. And how quickly that infant grows is down to you. I don't know where we're going to be in 5 days' time. If we get 5 seats, yeah, that's good. If we get 50 seats, I wouldn't be surprised.
Or if you win, it's even better.
If we win, again, it's a case of no one predicted Brexit, no one predicted Trump. And I feel we're at that turning point now in history where the next 3 days we could see nothing change or we could see everything change.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody. I'm just going to hand back to Joe for a second. Just to say finally, thank you.
My favourite policy is the ditching of net zero. I can't believe that we will be so stupid and other parties are so keen to do it. It's just something, you can't change the heat of the sun, you can't put people out of business by exporting jobs. Nothing's going to change by having net zero, so that's the biggest one for me.
Their views on education, in that they're anti-woke, they want to give people give them their freedom of speech back, and they're morally the soundest party. They are the new Conservatives, the traditional Conservatives. People should vote for them on moral principles, and they're sensible, and they're the voice of reason, logic. None of the other parties are saying anything sensible. We don't trust them. They've all been liars for the last 20 years. We need reform. This country needs reform.
I'm voting Reform UK because I can't believe how incompetent the Conservative Party have become, how utterly abysmal they've run social services. The NHS is on its knees. They haven't stopped the boats, and I and the Reform UK Party and Paul Godfrey in Brentwood Ongar have a plan to deliver just that. We can all be better off if we can stop these boats coming over, stop the illegal aliens and immigrants coming in. I'm all for fair and proper immigration, but illegal immigration is 1, against the law, 2, immoral, and 3, costing all of us more.
Paul Godfrey, the passion I saw this evening was the sort of passion that I'm expecting for our local MP, for us in the Brentwood area. So if you don't change, nothing will change. So vote Paul.
Well, it's just a lot of the policies align with our views and our preferences, particularly tax breaks and the way they're going to introduce tax and encourage people to work and encourage people to be entrepreneurial and
Instead of taking the money out of the British person's pocket, they're actually talking about putting it back in, and then we choose how to spend that money. So that's how I see it. We are given the choices. The choices are coming back to us, and not all of them being taken away from us as they currently are. I want to know where my money's being spent, and Reform are telling me that, and that's the important bit to me.
Well, I'm voting Reform because I particularly like their policy about raising the tax threshold to 20,000. I think it will help a lot of people on lower incomes, and I also think it will help a lot of pensioners. And that's the main reason why I'm voting Reform.
And myself, the main issue is immigration and illegal immigration. And my parents came to this country, and they came using the legal means, and I see the managed decline over the 50 years that I've lived here, and therefore that being the basic problem which leads to many other problems that we as a society experiencing at the moment. Health service, schools, infrastructure, everything emanates from this particular problem of immigration and illegal immigration. So that got to be controlled. Therefore, I am voting Reform.
Best thing, going to hopefully have some change. Bored of the hypocrisy, the lies, the false promises, and I think one of the biggest manifesto or contract promises is the 20,000, bringing income tax up to 20,000. I think that's going to help a lot of people level up.
Well, actually I've got two. One is to leave the European Court of Human Rights, because that's preventing us from doing so much, actually getting Brexit done, which a lot of us voted for. And the other one is, the reason I voted Brexit to start off with, is to get back our fishing waters. I'm fed up to the back teeth with these huge Dutch trawlers coming in. I'm sorry, I'm going to refer to this page, and sweeping all our fish out of our seas. It's wrecked our coastal communities and villages, and I want them to be restored, not just given as holiday lets by people with expensive, they've got two homes and let it to holiday makers, to restore the coastal villages up and down the country, especially up in the north, and restore the boat building, the rope making, the engine making, all the canning, all the processing, which used to be part of this great maritime nation, which we've lost.